NIMH had a special event for Autism Awareness Month that OARC hosted. It was a panel presentation called The Story Behind Julia, Sesame Street's Muppet with Autism.
Her name is Julia.
Hi, Julia. I'm Big Bird. Nice to meet you. Oh, Julia?
She has autism. She likes it when people know that.
Autism? What's autism?
She does things just a little differently, in a Julia sort of way.
Oh, okay.
It was such an honor to be on the team that got to bring Julia to life.
There's so many different ways that autism affects people, and there's no way we could possibly show everything. There's no way we could be symbolic of every kid that's out there.
I've been preparing for Julia for my whole life. I have a son who has high-functioning autism.
All right, wonderful. Well, we really applaud the work that you've done to raise awareness for autism, and it's wonderful having you here for Autism Awareness Month.
I really like how you scripted her replies to whether it's questions or comments from other characters.
When my brother has an experience that he either doesn't like or isn't used to, when he's reacting to that, people are like, wait, what is he doing? So is Alan the only one who kind of explains that to Elmo?
So I have autism and I know how it feels for Julia, and I was thinking maybe Julia can describe herself, how she's feeling.
And people would turn to me or turn to him and say, oh, you're too big to be in a shopping cart. You should be walking, you know, shame on you. It will be helpful if you come up with some things, you know, for the rest of the family and for parents to say. I kind of got to the point where I would say, he's autistic. If I don't have him in the shopping cart, I don't come shopping. So, but thank you very much.
I wasn't aware of this new character on Sesame Street until I saw the advertisement to come to today's event. Here I'm an NIH employee, and so I thought this was awesome. And so in the time since you started advertising for this event, I did get a chance to take a look at the website and some of the other things, and I'm very excited about what you're doing. My youngest son is 9, and he is autistic, and so my other son is the one who spoke earlier.
Hi, so I was wondering if you ever considered having an autistic adult on the show, kind of to model, you know, not only for kids and parents, but also for, you know, neurotypical kids that, you know, autism isn't just a thing that kids have, but that they have futures ahead of them, and they, and even when they grow up, they can be integrated into the community.
And it was a really successful and exciting event. We have some links here that if anyone wants to go back through the slides and see some of the press releases that came out during Autism Awareness Month, including the President's proclamation on autism and the UN Secretary General's message on autism. Some of the other events that went on around Washington and other areas. Just also wanted to bring to your attention the 2016 ASD Research Portfolio Analysis Report. The work for that is underway, and at the INSAR, the International Society for Autism Research meeting in Rotterdam, Netherlands, coming up in May, the OARC team as well as our partners from the UK and from Canada will be co-presenting the preliminary results of this analysis, and we hope that at the INSAR meeting there will be other countries that will be interested in joining in the future, and we will present that to you in October at our next meeting. We also wanted to give you an update on the Autism Cares Act report to Congress that is due in September 2018. The OARC is leading the coordination of this report, and so it will cover activities related to ASD and other developmental disabilities across the federal government. So the next order of business is talking about the Improving Health Outcomes for Individuals on the Autism Spectrum Working Group. And so we met with Dr. David Amaral and Dr. Julie Taylor by phone to discuss this since the last meeting, are still working on trying to get the actual working group selected so that we can begin the work.
And what we found is that there are certain parts of the brain, the frontal lobe right behind the forehead in particular, as well as a small structure that's about 2 inches in from your ear called the amygdala, Both of these structures actually grow too quickly. They get to the adult size too quickly in children with autism. There's a bunch of kids who probably have autism right from the get-go, right from conception or very early on. There's another group of kids who at 12 months old, they look fine. They're communicating, they're engaging socially, but then sometime between 18 and 24 months, they lose social behavior, they lose language, and they regress back into autism. But now we're showing that the kids who regress into autism, for whatever reason, are the ones who have the rapidly growing brains.
Neuron number increase. This is one of, postmortem studies in autism have really been lagging behind postmortem studies in other disorders. This is one of the few studies that are coming out now that involve a substantial sample size, showing not inconsistent with other findings in autism that essentially early in childhood there's an overexuberance of growth, in this case an increase in the number of neurons in the amygdala that then declines, whereas in typically developing individuals that number increases through childhood before declining like everything else with age. Yes, we point out that David nominated it and he is an author, so we have to note that conflict of interest. Another large sample comparing ADHD, children with ADHD and autism spectrum, as well as typically developing controls, looking at cognitive impairments and showing some differences between children with ASD and ADHD. So this is a study, the Gandal et al. Study. It points out that there is shared molecular neuropathology, meaning that the molecular disturbances at the level of postmortem brains have similarities across a number of different psychiatric disorders, including autism spectrum. Linda, do you want to comment on the next one?
Well, I think that there's been growing evidence that air pollution may have a risk factor for autism.
So this paper was in JAMA Pediatrics. It made me incredibly sad. We were talking before about mortality. This is a topic that contributes to mortality. This study basically showed that despite dozens and dozens of studies showing that there's no relationship between vaccines and autism, and despite a ton of money and energy being devoted to publicizing that information, that parents of children with autism are still choosing to withhold life-saving vaccines from their children with autism and from their younger siblings, which puts both of those groups at much greater risk for infectious disease from which they could die.